Hi ladies, today we are going to talk about fractions and percents. You have talked about fractions and percents in the past. We are just going to review how to convert a fraction into a percent and a percent into a fraction. Let's just remember what the word percent means. It's basically a ratio that compares a number to 100 because percent is per 100. Think of other words involving CENT. So we have centimeters, there are 100 centimeters in a meter. We have a century, that's 100 years. The number of cents in a dollar is 100. So look for those similarities. I know that we are always talking with 100 when we refer to something with cent in it. So per cent is per 100. So go ahead and get that down. To write a percent as a fraction, there are many ways to do this. We'll just look at a couple. You could express the ratio as a fraction out of 100 and then simplify it if possible. I just want to point out that it is perfectly fine to have percents that are less than 1% and greater than 100%. Obviously, if it's less than 1%, it's representing a very, very tiny, tiny amount. And if it's greater than 100%, you might say, well, how is that? Well, you're just looking at growth. Think about Photoshop. When you use Photoshop, if you have maybe a 4x6 picture, an image, and you want to make it larger but keep it proportional, it will grow by a certain amount. It might get 50% bigger, and we'd represent that by saying, it's 150% of the original size. So that's where you might have percentages over 100. So just keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and change some really basic percentages into fractions. So I know in 6th grade and 5th grade, you've worked with things like this, 48%. Well, one way to change this into a fraction is to put this number, 48, over 100. Okay, 48 hundredths, and then you simplify. Here you could divide by 4. 48 divided by 4 is 12. 100 divided by 4 is 25. And that's as low as we go. So we can say that 48% is equal to 12/25. Please note that these are all equal amounts. They are just different ways to represent the same thing. So 48%. Maybe you were taking a quiz and you got a 12 out of 25. 12 out of 25 happens to be a 48%. So better luck next time. Let's take a look at another example. Here, 130%. I'm going to follow the same format. Whenever you want to change a percentage into a ratio, you just take the number given, 130%, so 130, and you put it over 100. We have an improper fraction here. That is fine. We'll simplify this. You can divide by 10 right away and get 13/10, and this simplifies to 1 3/10. So again, these are equivalent. 130% equals 1 3/10. So in this case, like in the Photoshop example, maybe something's getting larger. Let's look at a very tiny percentage. 0.9%. We're going to do the same exact thing even though there's a decimal here. It doesn't matter. Whatever that percent is, we can change it into a ratio by putting it over 100. So in this case, I have 0.9 over 100. Now, we always have to simplify our fractions, and right now this is not simplified. One way to simplify this would be to get rid of that decimal. And how do we do that? Well, I could move the decimal over once if I multiplied 9/10 by 10. If I multiply the numerator by 10, I just have to multiply the denominator by 10 to keep everything proportional. And when we do that, we get 9 over 1,000. So 9 1,000ths. So this is a very small amount. 0.9% is equal to 9 1,000ths. Okay, so I'm sure you've seen examples like that before, but again, just keep them in mind, especially when you have percents over 100 or when you have decimal percents. This next one I'm going to show you is more of like that pre-algebra level. So let's take a look at something like this, 83 1/3%. Now I know all of you are going to run to your calculators and type this in and go, but wait, it goes on forever. What do I round to? Okay, do not use a calculator. Use your brain. It works very well. I know, I've seen it in action. So do not just immediately run to use a calculator. Do not round, because you won't get an exact answer. So do not round. What can we do here? Well, we can do the same thing that we've been doing. You might go, what? Well, what's your percentage? You have 83 1/3%. I'm going to go ahead and put that over 100, just like I've done with all of the other percentages. And now I'm going to simplify it, just like I did with all of the other percentages. Now the simplifying, there are a couple of ways you could do it. I'm going to show you one way that does work. So again, I would double star this one, use your notes while working through your bookwork in class, and be sure to ask questions if you have them. I'm going to first rewrite this horizontally as a division problem. So basically I'm taking 83 1/3 and I'm dividing it by 100. And again, this is just one way to work through this. We have multiplied and divided mixed numbers and integers before, so right now I would just say, do the division. Well, what do? You need to change 83 1/3 into an improper fraction. So you have to do 83 times 3 plus 1. And you might go, oh, well, can I use a calculator for that? No, you don't need to use a calculator. Just use your brain. We can do it. So you can do 80 times 3. What's 80 times 3, right? 240. What's 3 times 3? That's 9. Okay, so that gives you 249 right there. And then you have to add 1. So 249 plus 1, that's 250. 250. And what's my denominator? It's 3. So 83 1/3 is equal to 250 over 3. And I'm dividing that by 100 over 1. So I can actually flip that right now. You know, division is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So multiplying by 1/100th. And this is not so bad. I can cross cancel pretty easily. 250 and 100. 50 goes into both. It goes in here twice. How many 50s are in 250? You can think through that, right? 1, 2, you get 5. And then you just multiply. 5 times 1 is 5. 3 times 2 is 6. And we are done. So it turns out that 83 1/3% is equal to 5/6. You would not get this if you rounded 1/3 to 0.3. So again, I want to work with exact answers. I do not want estimations, and you can do it by doing some work on paper, which won't take that long. So please keep this, specifically this example, in mind while working through your bookwork. This is not the only way to change. Well, I'll get into that tomorrow. Never mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and write the fraction as a percent. Fraction as percent. So we're just reversing it. We're going backwards. Here we can write an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. This is one way to do it. So we can think proportions. So for example, I'm giving you 3/5, and I want to know, what is this as a percentage? Again, there are many ways to do this. We'll explore with decimals next unit, next lesson. But for now, let's just see how we can set this up as a ratio. So 3/5. Well, I know that my percentage will be something over 100, so I can set it equal to x over 100, and then I can go from there. I don't have to cross multiply because 5 going into 100, I'm sure you can figure that out, right? That's 20 times. So 3 times 20 gives me 60. You can't just leave it 60. We're going to a percentage, so 60/100ths is fine, but as a percent, this would be 60%. Please make sure that you're paying attention to when you need to place a percent sign after an answer. Before we were going from a percent to a fraction, so we didn't need to have that, but here we do. We need to have our percent sign. So that's one way to do that. Same thing, let's say you had 3/2. I know this is improper. I don't want to change it to 1.5 right now because I want to know, what is this in terms of a percentage. So I'll set it up as a ratio. This is equal to what over 100. Again, 2 times 100, 2 to 100, we're multiplying by 50. 3 times 50, we do 3 times 5 is 15 with a 0. So you will get 150. So we're talking about 150 over 100, and that leads to the percentage of 150%. So again, I was working with an improper fraction here because in order to set up a proportion, you need 2 ratios, not a mixed number and a ratio. Okay. let's look at one that does not involve something with really easy math. So let's say you have 3/7. And it's good to know how to convert these into percentages, especially if you're wondering what you got on something. You know, if you got a little quiz back and it was 3 out of 5 and you want to know, well, what is that as a percentage? You know, you can figure that out. Here, 3 out of 7. What percentage is this? Maybe 3 out of 7 people have brown hair in the class, and we want to know, you know, what percent of the class has brown hair. So again, we could set this up, you know, x over 100. 7 does not go easily into 100, so here I might use the cross product, and we divide by 7. Okay, and when you set that up, you can go ahead and pause and do the math. Okay, unpause when you're ready to see the answer. Okay, so when you do that, you do get 42.857 ... I didn't tell you how to round. Let's go ahead and round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So again, this number would be over 100, and I can convert that into a percent just like I did the other ones. The nearest tenth of a percent would be 42.9%. So that's important when you are given rounding directions. Round to the nearest tenth or hundredth, I'm just going to use tenth here, means you must round to the nearest tenth of a percent. That seems pretty obvious with the examples we've done, but later on when we look at other methods and decimals, you just want to make sure that you're not rounding too soon. You want to round at the very end of the problem so that your answer is as accurate as possible. So that's important. And like I said, this is not the only way to go from a fraction into a percentage. You could change these into decimals first and then multiply by 100. What am I talking about? Well, let me just show you. This is a quick preview of tomorrow's lesson. So let's say we went ahead and converted 3/7 into a decimal first. You would get 0.42857 ... right? But that's a decimal. How do you change a decimal into a percentage? Well, you multiply by 100. I'm sure you remember that. You move your decimal twice. When we do that, we would get 42.857 ... and again we would round to the nearest tenth of a percent, and we would get the same thing. So you can use whichever method you'd like, but I'm just presenting all of them here. Okay, let's see. I would like you to get out page 8 and just do a little bit of practice. I'm going to give you some of the tougher ones. So I'd say number 2, number 3, and number 25. Again, use your notes to help you with these, and hit pause when you're ready to see the solution. Hit unpause. Okay, so I'm assuming you've got it. Number 2 was 8 5/6%. So again, this was one of those funky ones that you had to start off with 8 5/6 over 100 and set it up as division. When you do that and you simplify, you will get 53 over 600. Number 3 was 10.5%. This one's not so bad. You could do this a couple of different ways. You could do it like the way we did it before, or you could write 10.5 over 100 and then multiply by 10 to move the decimal and simplify. Either way, you should get a final simplified answer of 21 over 100. And with number 25, here we want to write each fraction as a percent. We have 11/4. One way to do that would be to set up a proportion. Okay, 4 going into 100, that works out pretty well. And you will get 275%. That makes sense because 11/4 is an improper fraction, so we should be getting a percentage over 100%. Thank you guys so much. I will see you in class. Bye.